Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today we are doing, I guess, the first discussion sort of video. I don't know if that's what it is, that's probably what I'm going to label it as. Basically, today we are going to be talking about the next Demon Hunter album and where I think they should go, what I think they should do and all of that. And this was requested by Zach D, so thank you to Zach D for requesting the video. So I know it is a little early to be talking about the next Demon Hunter album because Outlive just came out, I think, in late March of this year. So it hasn't really been that long since their last album, and their next one probably won't come out for another maybe 2 years at least. First of all, because it was requested, and also I think it might be interesting to sort of talk about where I think they should go from Outlive and all of that sort of thing. However, there is one thing that I would like to say before I actually do this about Demon Hunter themselves, I guess. And that being that I really want their next album to be good, because if my sort of prediction is correct, then I feel like either Outlive or whatever their next album would be is their last album. I don't really know why I think that. Outlive to me just seems like a last album type of name, and then also if they do another album, I feel like it would be their last one just because the band's been going for a long time. Ryan Clark has other things going on with like Knives and stuff, and of course don't quote me on this. It is very possible that their next album may not be their last album, but personally I feel like there is a good chance that it could be, and if not that album, then potentially Outlive, which came out this year, could be their last album. Just keep that in mind, I guess, or maybe not, I don't really know. It makes no difference really, but that's just sort of my opinion on where the band is going to be going. So yeah, I don't really know why I put that in there, but I just thought, since this is about Demon Hunter's next album, that's sort of my opinion on what it's gonna sort of look like as far as if the band is gonna be ending at that point or anything. But that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with this video. I guess it sort of does, but as far as like where they're going with their next album, oh, it's the last one. But as far as what I want them to do with their next album, I have, I think, 6 things that I came up with that I would like for them to do, and things that I think might be interesting and all of that. So we're gonna get started. So the first thing that I think they should do on whatever their next album could be is to make it a bit heavier. Now, I know that a lot of people and a lot of fans of Demon Hunter have said that their last 2 albums, Outlive and Extremist, they were sort of going soft, I guess, and I can kind of see that complaint. I don't necessarily 100% agree with it, although I kind of do. I don't know. I feel like, especially if this is their last album, which again, it might not be, but if it is their last album, I think they would want to go out with a bang and really give us a heavy album. And even if it's not, I think having a little bit more heaviness to it, similar to albums like True Defiance or The World is a Thorn, might be a good idea, just because it's been a couple albums since we've had a really heavier Demon Hunter album, and while they have had songs on their last 2 albums that have been heavy across the board, I wouldn't really say they were overly heavy. For example, Outlive, it had songs like Cold Winter Sun, Died in My Sleep, and Half is Dead, and then like Slight the Odds and Patience, which all of those, or at least some of them, had heavier elements to them, but they weren't really heavy songs. At least not in the way that some of their previous ones have been. So I'm not saying I want it to be like across the board, like every single song is heavy, but bringing back some of those heavier elements would be nice. Another thing sort of to do with the sound of the album that I want to talk about is the synths. And personally, while I don't mind them, I feel like on Outlive they were a little much. For example, on Outlive there were quite a few synths throughout it, especially on songs like Died in My Sleep and The End. And while I think Died in My Sleep was pretty good, I think The End was easily the most forgettable song on the album and one of the most forgettable songs that Demon Hunter's ever done. And the synths in that I don't really think helped because they were probably my least favorite part of the song. Just, I feel like they were done quite poorly, didn't really sound that good, and all of that. I'm not saying I'm completely opposed to them having synths in their music, because I'm not. I think if done well, they can really add a lot to a song, similarly to, like I said, Died in My Sleep, or even some of their other songs like God Forsaken or Grand Finale. I think the synths used in those songs really added a lot. So I'm not really opposed to it, and I don't really know if it's less synths that I want or just more good ones, because it hasn't always worked out great with Demon Hunter, I think. And it also kind of coincides with the heavier part of it, where I want it to be a little bit more on the metal side, having a little less of that synths and electronics to it. So that's just another thing about the sound that I would like to see. The final thing, I guess, about this, not really the sound of the album, but just one type of song that I would like to see, is a piano ballad, which is something that Demon Hunter, if my mind is correct in remembering this, have really only done once, and with The Tide Began to Rise from the triptych. And I know they did a at least one piano version of other songs. The one that comes to mind for me is the one for Carry Me Down, but really, I consider that more of an alternate version rather than just a plain original piano song. And I think it would be nice to see one of those on their next album, since they are very, very rare and they don't do them very much. With other bands similar to them, it's worked out very well, such as Red, which is a band that has done a lot of really good piano ballads. And I'm not saying that I think they should copy Red or anything, because I think they should be their own separate things, But it would be nice to get something like that, especially seeing as how it's a bit different from anything that most of what they've done before, I guess. So now these last three things are, one of them, I guess, has to do with the sound of the album. But it's a little bit more of things that I want them to do that they haven't really done a whole lot before, because heavy songs they've done before, synths, or rather me not wanting as much of them, or whatever it is, not really less, but it's a weird thing. But that, and then a piano ballad, which they have done before a couple of times. But this stuff is really sort of new territory, I think, that I think they should try, and sort of where I want them to go stylistically with their next album, and all of those sorts of things, if that makes any sense at all. So the first thing is to have more influences and a little more diversity. Not that Demon Hunter hasn't had diversity at all in any of their albums, because just in their last album they had heavy songs, they had more power ballad type songs, they had just sort of rock songs, they had very melodic songs, they had some non-melodic songs, or I guess one non-melodic song, because I don't really think One Less is all that melodic, but that's really the only one. But still a good amount of variety. But as far as more influences go with that, I would like to see them change things up a little. About, I would say, a week ago, I was listening to True Defiance, and something that I noticed that was present in several songs on that album, like Someone to Hate and My Destiny, and maybe a couple others as well that I'm just not remembering, is how some of the lead guitars sounded a lot like what you might hear from a black metal band. And I think that was a really cool sort of influence that they took, having those guitar leads be similar to that certain style of metal. So I think just taking inspiration from other places that they haven't really done before. Not even just within metal, but within music in general, even. And I know it might be kind of hard for them to do that, but I think they have done stuff like it before. Like, some of their choruses are very, very reminiscent of, like, a pop chorus. Some of their stuff from Summer of Darkness, I think some of the verses sound almost like they're being, like, in a scream voice, they're almost being rapped, or something kind of like that. Like, if you listen to the verse to Not Ready to Die, sort of has that sort of vibe to me. I don't know. More influences, more inspiration from different styles and all of that I think would be cool to incorporate. So the next one has really nothing at all to do with the sound, and that is one of two things that both sort of go together. And that is a concept album or an album with an overall theme that is throughout the album. So, as far as these go, it's not really something they've done before, especially with the concept album, because they have had albums in the past that have had sort of a theme throughout the album, or something similar to it at least. The World is a Thorn is the one that comes to mind for having the strongest one. I would say True Defiance and Summer of Darkness may also have had that to a lesser extent. It's something that I kind of like when bands do. I mean, it's nice to have albums where there's really not one theme throughout, so they can be a little more free to do what they want, but it is also nice to just have one consistent theme across an entire album. As far as a concept album goes, though, I'm not really sure what they could do with that, but I think it would be interesting to have an album that sort of tells, not necessarily explicitly and like literally tells a story, but something that sort of flows like one. And I think that might be interesting for them to do, so that's that point, I guess. And the final thing that I'm going to mention that I would like to see is some more guest vocals. So, this hasn't been done since The World is a Thorn back in 2010. It's been quite a few years since it's happened, and it's something that I do kind of miss seeing. I mean, I don't absolutely love when bands have guest vocals. It's not like, oh, they had guest vocals, that's immediately great. But it is nice to see every once in a while, and they haven't done it on their past 3 albums. So I think it would be nice to throw in a couple songs with guest vocals in them. And I do have a list of a few vocalists that I think might be able to sort of do that. Of course, they might bring in some more that I do not know that could work well. Like, for example, the guest vocalists on The World is a Thorn. I did not know who they were before I heard it, and it had the vocalists from like Soilwork and Scar Symmetry on it, and that sort of led to me becoming a fan of those 2 bands. So, you know, I'm not saying only these vocalists should be used, but they're just some ideas. So the first one is Michael Barnes from Red. Of course, Red is probably my favorite band, if not they're in the top 3. And I think Michael Barnes has a good voice, and even though Red and Demon Hunter are a little bit different, if you like Red, then you'll like Demon Hunter, and vice versa. I think he should be on a Demon Hunter album. I think it would be pretty cool. Plus, with it being a Demon Hunter album, and if it does what I said earlier about being heavier, then we could get a little bit more screaming from Michael, which Red does use screaming in it. Often, not extremely often. They haven't really done a full-on metal song, I wouldn't say, where it's like just screaming similar to Demon Hunter. But I think it would be cool if he had a song that he was in where he like did just screams. And I think that would work really cool. Next one is Brooke Reeves from Impending Doom. And really the only reason I say this is, well, there's 2. One, I think Brooke Reeves is a good vocalist, but even more so, Ryan Court did guest vocals on their song My Light Unseen from Baptized in Filth, and I think he did a good job on that song, by the way. So I think it would be cool since the vocalist of Demon Hunter did an Impending Doom song, if the Impending Doom vocalist came over and did a Demon Hunter song. So that's pretty much why I chose him. Plus, I just like his vocal style and all of that. And so I think it would be cool if he was in a Demon Hunter song. And then next is Brian Head Welch from Love and Death and Korn. Mainly Love and Death because that's the only band that he really does vocals for. And I don't know, I just think he would fit in with Demon Hunter pretty well, and I like his voice, so that's pretty much that. And then next is Jake Ors from August Burns Red, which pretty much same thing. I like his voice, and he hasn't been in. I don't really think any vocalist that Demon Hunter has had really has a sound like Jake Ors. So I think it would be a little unique, I guess, and bring something different to the table. And then Micah Kinnard from O Sleeper, which I think is probably one of the lesser likely ones. But I mainly got this idea because Ryan Clark from Demon Hunter helped design O Sleeper's logo, the broken pentagram. So there's a connection there. It might lead to him being a Demon Hunter song, it might not, I don't know. But I think that might be a good idea as well. So that pretty much wraps things up. Those are the things that I would like to see from the next Demon Hunter album. I know in places I was a little vague and it wasn't really super in-depth, but nevertheless it is things that I would like to see. So let me know in the comments what you would like to see from the next Demon Hunter album. Any ideas you have that you think might be interesting, and any of those sorts of things. And of course, as this was a suggested video, if you have an idea for a video for me to do, leave that in the comments and I might do it. Leave those in the comments as well. And that's pretty much it for this video, so I'll see you next time.